When talking about key players in the plot of Genshin Impact, one would immediately consider the deities, and rightfully so, considering that the other tales of the playable characters seem so mundane and human when put against the very ideals of gods and immortal beings. It is inevitable that some of these characters will be underutilized and forgotten. But some characters, despite their humanity in the grand scheme of things, play a fascinating and unique role in the story. It should be considered that the potential of certain characters are immeasurable, and though they may seem to be stagnant storylines at first, they could branch into something that plays a vital role in assisting the traveler. Today, we will be discussing the untapped potential of Diluc and Kaeya in the story of Genshin Impact. The two brothers are 2 out of 6 of the main characters in the Mondstadt story quest, and though their business with the Divine has long passed, I believe that these two will both be key companions of the traveler when certain plots begin to unfold. I will state that this is the first part of the Corruption Trilogy, a series of 3 videos encompassing similar topics with different characters and perspectives as foci. I would also like to preface a warning to this video and the rest to come, however. This video is not character-centered, but rather narrative-centered. This means that we will not be focusing on Diluc and Kaeya in introspection, but rather what place they have in the story, and what potential plot lines exist that would bring them in. Please keep that in mind when watching the Corruption Trilogy. But without further ado, let's study why Diluc and Kaeya will be essential characters in the story of Genshin Impact. Before I begin with the characters in question, I want to set the context of the plot of Genshin. We have 2 overarching main narratives that will play into the entirety of the whole game. These are the tales of the Fatui Harbingers and the Abyss. We know that the Abyss siblings' plan of corrupting the Valen was from the very beginning of the prologue, and the Fatui became an evident threat upon the intervention with the Laird de Hermel, Jean's unrest with diplomatic relations, and the Harbinger incident. The reason I want to emphasize the existence of these 2 separately is because having 2 antagonistic plotlines in a story is relatively difficult to execute, especially if both are already very established villains. It creates a divide in the story that demands equal attention, and if done poorly, you'll be splitting the focus of the audience into 2. Which is why Genshin Impact hints that the Abyss and the Fatui Harbingers will eventually coincide with each other through the introduction of the Harbingers' backgrounds. There are several narrative devices that are available to Genshin Impact that will tie in the story of the Abyss and the Fatui Harbingers, and this is most notable with the release of the 1.4 Archon Quest update and the 1.5 Pale Flame set. The intentions of the Abyss are clear in the 1.4 update. Create a mechanized god from the severed body parts of Asael and the defiled statue of the Seven. The quest further elaborates the Abyss siblings' hostility towards the truth of this world, and that Teyvat has more secrets to offer that the traveler must seek out himself. Conria plays a large motivation in both Dainsleep and the Abyss siblings' actions, in which the Abyss sibling states that it was once a city whose people turned into monsters. The Abyss Order's agenda is evident from the very beginning: weaponize and corrupt the Celestial. But the mentions of retribution against the Divine are not isolated to the Abyss Order. The Tsaritsa's plan and motivation for burning the old world away is not far from the horrors we saw the Abyss sibling witness. And maybe it was at that very moment in history that showed her what could grow from the cinders of a scorched past. And with that, she shares the knowledge and motivation amongst the 11. The Lady of the Stainless Bloom wishes for the darkness of corruption to be purified in silent ice. The man of the moment of cessation burns with an ignis of resistance for the gods that have never looked upon him with favor, and the fair fellow of the surpassing cup believes that he is beyond the prospects of divine judgment. The jester's tale in the mocking mass also has a bitter tinge to it. He states that he was unable to tear themselves away from sin, and divine wrath was the price to pay for such foolishness. Therefore, may his brethren join him in making a mockery out of the world, and rewrite the rules of destiny. The Fatui Harbingers would play essential roles in the Tsaritsa's plan against the other Archons. Therefore, a consequent alliance between the Abyss and the Tsaritsa would not be too far-fetched narratively. Both have aligning motivations, and while I do see that the Abyss would be hesitant to work with an Archon, I don't doubt that seeing as both parties have access to the same means of weaponizing creatures, they'll work together, or at least have a brief and unstable allegiance. But just like how they operate in the game, both parties will be working in the shadows, regardless of their alliance. And with an unknown enemy, information becomes the most vital of weapons. Diluc and Kaeya are esteemed and highly respected members of Mondstadian society. Diluc is the head of the Dawn Winery in Mondstadt and is known as a passionate and zealous soul that wishes to protect the entirety of the City of Freedom in his own way. He is a charming and eccentric individual who has a strict moral compass to abide by. This was because upon the death of his father Crepus after the battle with Ursa the Drake, the Order of Avonia silenced his father's victory to maintain credibility. Rather, the Order of Avonius considered that fame and glory wouldn't be fit for a mere businessman, especially not a dead one. It was from this confrontation that Diluc left the Order of Avonius, but his sense of justice never did. It was in his travels after leaving Mondstadt that he knew of the Fatui's strongholds, superiors, and secrets. Kaeya is the cunning and silver-tongued cavalry captain of the Knights of Avonius, an adopted brother to Diluc. His childhood was filled with uncertainty unbefitting of the persuasive man we know today, or what we know of him. He is as secretive as he is dangerous, both of his past and his present. He has tabs on mercenaries and important figures in the treasure hoarders, as well as a vast network that connects him to various hidden knowledge that most people, even the Knights of Avonius themselves, do not have access to. Both are already trusted companions of the traveler, either for better or for worse. But we must understand that their companionship isn't the only aspect tying them to the story, but rather several key factors. Let's begin. There is one trait that both brothers share that is evident in their presentation: information. As stated before, both the Abyss and the Fatui are secretive, and gathering intel from both has been proven difficult time and time again. The traveler himself knows how important information is. As stated by Paimon in the 1.4 Archon quest, even he has gone through the extra mile just to learn everything he can about the destruction of Khaenri'ah and the Abyss. Having allies who have access to efficient and effective forms of information is vital. Both the brothers operate within separate underground intelligence networks that have benefited the traveler during his missions in Mondstadt. Diluc was the one that assisted Jean and Venti with the subjugation of the Abyss Mage controlling the Valen, and Kaeya was the one that informed the traveler of the existence of a singular leader taking care of the Abyss operations. However, their faculties of knowledge don't stop at just what they have presented in the cutscenes. Let's look at specifics. Diluc has knowledge of the delusions and is currently the only other person next to the Harbingers that are in possession of one. It's also important that he is a companion of the traveler. Studying the power that makes the Harbingers surpass human limitations and even godly jurisdictions is one of the best ways to take a Harbinger down. Understanding the source of one's power means that they'll see its weaknesses and exploitations, as well as use it for their own benefit. While Tartaglia could be a potential source of information as well, it is imperative to understand the impact of loyalty, and as a Harbinger, I doubt Tartaglia would risk his family and status into opening all of the Fatui's secrets. So having an unrestricted and opposing party have knowledge of the delusions will be the eventual key to killing the other Harbingers. Diluc also has extensive information on Fatui's strongholds and how to infiltrate and kill through them effectively. Upon his departure of Mondstadt, he found and destroyed several Fatui strongholds in the pursuit of the truth, and it was only with the interference of the Harbingers themselves that he was stopped. In the story quest, we also know that Diluc knows the machinations when looking for the stolen lyre. It is also understood that what little is known about the Harbingers, even less is known about the Abyss Order, as expressed by Diluc's dialogue in the Abyss Mage quest. Diluc knows how to locate and where to locate Abyss Mage strongholds, as well as effectively intercept them as a threat. So much so that in his story quest, he is considered a threat by the mages. For Kaeya, he is known for keeping strict tabs on people he sees suspicious. A good example of this was when Aether found the notes the cavalry captain has on the treasure hoarders. Kaeya is a much more difficult character to pinpoint about what he knows and what he doesn't, because he always seems to just have the strangest work ethics. But we do know one thing. He works fast. Really fast. He was able to gather intel about Kaeya in the manga despite her just having arrived to Mondstadt before the Ludihar passed them. He has close connections with the treasure hoarder activity, and he was eager to immediately find dirt on the traveler upon his introduction. We also know that Kaeya is an agent of Khaenri'ah, and that unlocks a potential pool of knowledge for the traveler that has yet to be shared. Perhaps the inner machinations of the Abyss comes from understanding what was the ways of the past, whether it be experienced by Kaeya himself or simply word of mouth from other citizens. He will give a perspective that the traveler so desperately lacks. The perspective of a descendant. The perspective of someone innocent, having to bear the weight of sins he did not commit. But the most important piece of information they share is this. The Fatui and the Abyss Order are both able to corrupt sentient and divine entities, as well as sap and manipulate archon magic. As stated before, the weaponization of the divine is one of the Abyss Order's primary goals in the crusade against the gods. A lost taboo of corruption is a motif that is already stated in the in-game lore from the 1.4 story and the situation with Dvalin. They have the ability to taint, break, and destroy. The Abyss also have the abilities to sap out elemental magic and archon magic from sources such as the Statue of the Seven. The Fatui, on the other hand, are also capable of such feats. The Fatui are capable of acquiring an archon's gnosis through force, and while this isn't explained, I feel as though it's a power that is acquired from archon residue. In the manga, Amber makes a clear connection to the archon residue injection with the Fatui Harbinger's mechanical bird and the delusion Diluc's father used, in which she states that the metal bird is extruding a particular scent of mist grass. We know that a delusion is a somewhat enhanced form of the vision, and it reacts negatively when in the presence of one. In the Genshin Impact manga, both Kaeya and Diluc learn of the heinous acts and disgusting methods the Fatui exploit to keep power both physically and politically. Dotori and his associates oversaw several key aspects regarding weaponizing divine power. An experiment they were executing was the ability to directly inject other humans with archon residue. In a conversation by Kaeya and one of Dotori's subordinates, Dr. Kripp, the Fatui were planning to recruit the youth into the ranks of the Fatui. One of the victims of this experiment was a young child from Sumeru by the name of Kaeya. Therefore, it is much more preferable if the trained Fatui members start from a young age. Several children from Mondstadt were also recruited by the Fatui Harbingers, and we know that Ajax was received amongst the ranks by Pulcinella when he was a child. We know from the Archon Residue projects that not all humans can withstand the procedure. At best, it corrupts and sends the patients into a frenzy. However, at worst, it silences the subject permanently. The Fatui are dangerous. We cannot forget that these people are murderers, thieves, liars, and monsters. The Abyss may be abominations, but the real heathens walk amongst us in suits, ties, and smiles. Though, we mustn't forget the reason why the Abyss exists either. Destroy the nation under the protection of the Seven as retribution. And that brings me to my last point. Because information is easy. we have a lot of smart characters. Having a character know a lot isn't them playing a pivotal role, but rather it's having a convenient plot device. No. A character needs to have a reason to want to be in the story, a purpose as to why they're fighting against the greater evil. This is what sets the two brothers apart from any other character in the game. Justice. Both the stories of Diluc and Kaeya revolve around the tale of vengeance and justice, and rightfully so. Diluc's life was changed in a flash by the Fatui and the Order of Favonius, while Kaeya's tale began with the ending of a civilization. Diluc's anguish about the death of his father at the hands of the Fatui is what had always sparked his motivation to delve deeper into understanding the inner workings of the Fatui's power, from their delusions to their political agendas to their strongholds and to their harbingers. The animosity he bears for the injustices brought by the 11 only grows the further he learns more about them. He has been personally stopped by the 11 before, and it's finally due time to return the favor. Assisting the traveler, who at some point will have to face the harbingers, by divulging in him everything he knows of the delusions and how the Fatui harbingers have access to honing and manipulating Archon residue, may be essential in the purification of those who have been forcibly corrupted. It may also be the key in understanding how to save the citizens of Conria. Archon power is a strange feat, and tampering with such has consequences. It is even stranger now that we understand its effects to humans. It can change a being, or curse them with eternal life, or destroy them from the inside. But it can also heal those who are unwell, invoke elemental power, and even manifest through creation and life. It is volatile. One that Kaeya will be motivated to understand further, especially now the traveler confides in him. His mission and existence revolves around bringing hope to a civilization who was doomed by the gods. And if his true purpose is to save the Abyss from the curse placed upon them by the Archons, then understanding the power of the Seven through the traveler would be the perfect way to find the answers he's searching for. Two brothers, two greater evils, two tales of retribution. One goal: undo the wrongs done by powers above upon the innocent. Diluc and Kaeya both play a role in a story of reversing those hurt and tainted by unjust ideals and unsolicited power. But the further we get into the story, we come to understand further the truth. Those with power corrupt, and the Fatui corrupting the people of Tevat for their experiments, or gold corrupting the many abominations of the world, or Albedo being corrupted by his own discoveries and pursuits, or Lumine corrupting the divine entities who roam the land. Would it not be ideal that the travelers seek out those that wish to cleanse the world? Though allies may be too generous of a word.